So, good morning everybody. We're now into the third week of June and we're still in lockdown. So this video is really a supplement to a Zoom group that I'm doing, and there's going to be some quilting, but it's not an all-inclusive session on how to quilt. It's really a supplement to the Zoom project, but of course anyone can join in, and if you get any tips from it then that's wonderful. So what I'm going to talk about is the first part is about how we layer up our piece of work. So there's three elements into quilting, and I think sometimes we get hung up on the different words of what means what. So when we say we're making a quilt, then I think really what we mean is the whole thing, the three layers. But the top piece is our pieced work. So that's all our patterns joined together, and that forms the pieced work. Then we have the layer of wadding. Sometimes it's called batting. That tends to be more of an American word. It's exactly the same product. And then we have our backing. So that's the piece of fabric that is the back of the quilt. Now, when we quilt, we generally quilt the three layers together. So the pieced work is all the decorative fabrics joined together, and what the quilting is when we're bringing those layers all together. So we don't want to just have the three layers sitting on top of each other with nothing bringing them together. So that's what the quilting part is. So people often say, oh, I'm going to quilting, when really what they mean is I'm going to piecing. So that's just a slight difference. So when I'm talking about the quilting, today I'm talking about bringing those layers together. So the first thing I would do is I prepare my piece of work. Now this is just one method, it's not the be all and end all, it's just one method I use. So what I would do is I would piece all the centre together till I get to a size that I think that's big enough now to be quilted. So this is a square, it's Trojan horses for a new grandson. And what I usually do is I cut the wadding and the backing fabric to the size of the finished quilt. So if you can see on two sides, I've got quite a border of wadding with nothing in it. And what I like to do is when I'm quilting this area, I like to be able to quilt off into this area without having to tie the threads on and off, because I will then cover that area with a frame or a border, and then I'll add the binding around the whole thing. If I'd added my frame onto there to make it to the finished size, if I didn't want my quilting to go into the frame, then I've got to carefully tie off the threads, and basically it's not a task I like to do, so this is the method I wear. It's just a method, it's not the method, it's just the one I like to use. Now, the order to put them in is I've got my piece of work, I've cut my wadding to the finished size, and I've also cut the backing fabric to the finished size. So then what I do is take the top piece of work away, lay the wadding back down on table, the carpet, the ironing board, whatever it is you're using, so as flat an area as you can get. I'm fortunate I can use a dining table. If you can get down and use a carpet is great. I know people use their ironing boards, and for small pieces of work that's fine. So then what I would do is I would add the backing fabric onto the wadding. So if you like, we're upside down. Now I like to use a spray method, so I've got 505 and this one is called stick and spray. I use either or, they're very simple. And they're a temporary spray adhesive. Don't be tempted to use Boss Stick, that doesn't work. So I came a bit later to using spray glue, and I think it's because I thought, oh, it'll clog up the needle, or it'll leave marks, but it doesn't. And once I started to use it, I don't go back to anything else. So I don't use safety pins, I don't tack it, but if that's the method you prefer to use, then fine, you use that. I like it, and as well, what's nice is if I find during the process my fabric has moved slightly, all I have to do is peel it away and then reposition it back down, and it works. So I would have the wadding on the surface, I would spray the wadding, and just a light spray, you're not smothering it, and then I put the backing fabric onto the wadding. When that's all smooth and I'm happy, if you've got somebody to help you, that's fine. If not, again, don't make your piece of work too big so it's difficult to manage. But you could use something like your 24-inch ruler to smooth out, but you're smoothing, not stretching, because don't forget your fabric for the backing, which is going to be, I would assume, is going to be cotton, that won't stretch, but the wadding will have some stretch. Now if you stretch the wadding and put the backing on, what will happen is that the wadding will relax back into its place and you'll wrinkle the background. So you're smoothing it into place. When you're happy that that layer is looking good, then flip it over. So your background fabric is now sitting on your surface and you've got the wadding side up, and spray that area, bearing in mind that your piece of work might not go all the way to the edge. Now, what I find is easy to do is to find the centre of the piece of work and do fold over, spray one half, smooth that into place. When I'm happy with that, fold the other end up, spray and smooth that into place. Again, if we were in class, that's what we would all be doing, helping each other out. But on your own, you can do it. Just take your time. You know, if you get flustered. I got flustered yesterday because I had to piece the backing fabric. I didn't have a piece big enough, and I seamed it. And after I'd got it on, I realised I'd put it on the wrong way around, so that the seams were sitting on the top. So I had to peel it all off, and it was very hot, and I got really bothered. So I just had to go for a little walk and then come back to it. So when we're happy that all our layers are nice and smooth, then we're ready to think about what we're going to do with quilting. So the other thing I just wanted to show you as well is you can piece your wadding together. Now you can use like a zigzag stitch. You want to keep it nice and flat, but I've used this iron-on tape that will seam the wadding together, so I wanted to use up these pieces, and it's absolutely fine to do that as long as it stays flat. What you don't want is for it to start ruching up underneath. Okay, so that's the end of the first one. I'll set up the machine and then I'll talk about how we're actually going to quilt.